Well, cool. Well, let's get this kicked off. Appreciate you joining us, Matt. So I guess we'll just go ahead and make some introductions here. So I'm Drew, CEO of Funnelfly.
Hey, Brandon. I am growth marketing manager at Funnelfly.
And I'm Matt Pierce, founder and CEO of Immediate.
So Matt, really appreciate you joining us today. Couple of really quick questions, and that I think a lot of people are interested in hearing about. So how did Immediate come about? Like what was the immediate pain point that drove you to start this business?
Yeah, so we started Immediate, interestingly enough, kind of pivoted out of another business. So a few years ago, early 2017, my family had some health issues, aging parents and grandparents, and just had a really difficult time with finding good, high quality caregivers. And so we kind of set out. I remember having the thought and actually saying this to one of my mentors who turned out to be one of my co-founders here. We were having lunch one day and I go, man, how in 2017 can I get a push notification when my Uber driver is 2 minutes away? Or I can get a notification when my groceries are on the front doorstep, but I can't be told when somebody shows up or doesn't show up at my grandmom's house that's 2 hours away. And I said, we got to fix that. And so we started building kind of a caregiver tracking transparency app, and built enough to be dangerous, and went out and started pre-selling it. And we're talking to an agency that had about 1,000 caregivers. And this lady, after I present to her, she said, Matt, what you're doing is nice, but you're just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. And I said, well, tell me more about the problem. And she says, well, I have 60% turnover every year. There's organizations like restaurants that have 80% turnover a year. She said, I think the national average in hourly jobs is 40% turnover every year. And she said, I believe that the biggest part of the issue is that people leave jobs where they're hourly employees. They're leaving jobs so they can go out and find other positions where they can make 25 cents more an hour, $1 more an hour. And I think it's a lot of financial incentive. So she said, if you can figure out a way to help me get my people paid at the end of a shift versus having to wait until next Friday, I really think you're onto something. And I remember having the conversation with my co-founder about what we were doing and what she had told me. And he said, Matt, what we're building is a nice to have for 30,000 home care agencies, when what she's telling you is this is a painkiller for 250 million Americans living paycheck to paycheck. So we pumped the brakes on everything we were doing on the home health and home care side, and we really dug in deep on how can we provide a service to individuals when they need access to money that where we are not a lender and we're not regulated as a lender, where we give people access to their own money that's just caught up in a pay cycle. And so that's where we got started building Immediate Pay. And essentially what we do is we build these time tracking and payroll integrations to help people go in and see what they've earned since their last payday, and simply in the app request to pull down money into a bank account or loadable debit card prior to the next paycheck.
That's fantastic. So all great businesses come from pain points, personal pain points that you go through.
Yeah.
So what? Go ahead.
Yeah, it really does, and it's just interesting how things have evolved. My first job out of college was a 100% commission sales job, and I remember driving down 280 and had a guy in front of me that was pulling a flatbed with some equipment on it, some landscaping equipment, and a rock popped off and hit my windshield, cracked it right down the middle, right where I couldn't see, and it was a $500 deductible, and I'm on commission. And so I didn't have the money to get it fixed. But it's one of those things where if I can't be out driving and making sales calls, then I can't make money to fix this thing. And so fortunately for me, I called my parents. They said, put the place on the phone. We'll give them our credit card and we'll pay for it. And then you just pay us when you get your next paycheck. But not everybody has that luxury. And when we found out, and we started doing all this research, we found out that 78% of our population is living paycheck to paycheck. Most people don't have that option. So they turn to things like credit cards where the average American has $8,800 in credit card debt. We write bad checks, or the worst situations like in Alabama, 456% APR payday loan, which is just outrageous. And so we just really felt compelled and driven to offer something to individuals where they could responsibly access their own money versus going and lending from some of these predatory third-party services.
Cool. So the development of your product is obviously one of the most important, that you're building a SaaS product, right? And so any tips on how do you build a product around what your customer wants and needs? Like, how do you guys do it? How do you guys making sure that you're building what your customer is looking for?
Yeah, it's such a great point, because I mean, what we first thought, and actually I go back and look at it every now and again just to remind myself of where we came from. Our first kind of process flow was a sketch that I did on a sheet of paper and scanned it and sent it to my partners and said, let's make this work. And to see kind of how it's evolved from what we think in our minds is what the customer needs versus actually getting out there and finding out what exactly they need in real time. And our, not only our product, but also our processes continue to evolve. We actually, we took a customer live 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned this to you earlier, Drew. We took a company live 2 weeks ago, and it's the first time we took a company live on a Friday. And we found out pretty quickly that Friday go lives are not good. Our team ended up answering support tickets all throughout the weekend, and some of them, I mean, they were all, they were all things that we could tackle and fix and resolve. But a lot of them were just processes that, by going live on a Friday, we kind of limited our ability to ensure their success in that one day. So, but then here's the kicker is we've had a pretty busy past couple of weeks, and we took another group live on Monday. Well, what we found out is Monday go lives aren't good either, because it's a brand new pay period. And so you send this out to people and go, hey, here's a new pay period. You can download the Immediate Pay app and go in and see what you've earned and access your money. Well, on Monday, they haven't earned anything. And so people, are sending support tickets like, why isn't any of my hours there? And so we just continue to evolve, and you continue to really solicit that customer feedback. And one of the things that I've found that's really important is at each company to identify a champion that we can sit down with and do regularly scheduled calls. Early on in the onboarding process, in some cases it's almost daily, but as you move on, it becomes a weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly call, where you work with that champion and get real-time feedback from them and from their organization, so you can continue to make the product better. And that is what helps us create our roadmap, create our process flows, and continue to refine all those.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So
I love hearing all of that. When it comes to the actual development of the product, the technical aspect, I know a lot of startups get kind of in trouble there. That they start using certain frameworks that aren't really made for them. It starts racking up the cost and so on. Do you have any advice, to try to do your research beforehand so you don't get stuck going down an alley where, later on down the road, you're not really set up for success? Do you have any advice there?
Absolutely. I think there's two big pieces of that. One is scalability, right? To your point, you've got to research and make sure that the platform you're going to put your people on will scale. We of course use Amazon Web Services behind the scenes because we know that the scale is pretty much infinite. But you've got to do your research to make sure that the type of coding language, the type of platform you're building, the back end hosting, all of those things can build. Because especially when any entrepreneur, we don't jump into this thinking, oh man, I want to add a customer a month, and in a year I'm gonna go from here to here. Every time you see a presentation, it's the hockey stick, right? It's, man, by the end of this year we're gonna be at 100,000 users and blah blah blah, and so you really have to think about that even if you fall short of this hockey stick, you've still got to prepare for where are we going, and making the right decisions and building on the right platform to start. I talk, our team probably gets tired of hearing me talk about this, because we're still foundationalizing. You know, we've been doing this for a year and a half, but everything is still a foundation for how we can continue to grow. Because if in the next 3 years we're going to surpass 1 million users, how are we going to get there without having these things automated, without having these processes, without having this platform? So everything we do, we look out and go, well, if we can do this today with, you know, to actually, yesterday we started taking live a 1,400 employee company. And I'm like, okay, so let's make sure that everything we're doing for a 1,400 employee company can be replicated for the 30,000 employee company that's in our pipeline that may close in the next quarter. And so all of that on a platform perspective, we've really got to make sure that you do the right research. We were fortunate enough that my CTO has built a scalable platform in the past. And so he had obviously done a lot of research, not only research on his own, but actually seen the way a system can scale. The last engine that he built was processing 3 billion data points monthly. And so if we get to a point where we're processing, you know, a quarter of that, we're doing really good. And so so some of it is just lessons learned along the way. Other is just really getting out there and investigating and doing your research. Now I'll say the second piece of that is, I think it's really important that you make sure from a development perspective that you own the source code. I've seen far too many people that have gotten into a situation where they go and partner with a third-party organization to help them build their system, which in a lot of cases is the best practice, and it makes a lot of sense, right? You don't have to bring somebody on full time yet. You're early stage, you're bootstrapping. It's awesome to be scrappy, and so I think that's a great key to success is leveraging a third-party company that's built a lot of technology, but you've got to make sure that everything they do, that you own that you own all that source code, and that you have the ability that when you're ready, you can bring that in-house and put your own team on it. And so I think that's something I can't count on two hands the number of entrepreneurs I've talked to that have gotten burned by not flipping over all the rocks and not checking all those boxes. So I do think that's a big part of the software development piece.
Yeah, that is awesome advice. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. And just piggybacking off of that, I know a lot of, you know, marketing agencies that do the same thing with platforms they're on, you know, whether it's Google Ads, Facebook, so on, that they consider it proprietary and they own everything they're doing. So you can't piggyback off what they've done in the past by bringing it in-house.
Right.
Yeah. So really having that set up really with the source code, I feel like that is really one of the most important things. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned 1 million users. What is y'all's big, hairy, audacious goal? Like if you could be X, what is that thing? What do you guys stay up at night thinking, dreaming about?
Yeah, so our mission at Immediate is to, what we say all the time, our mission is to positively impact the financial health of millions of Americans. And I know that, you know, understanding that the average, I think the latest figures I saw is like 3 or 3.2, something like that. Like for every adult, there's another, you know, 2 that are connected to them. So we think if you can go in and help somebody make better financial decisions and put themselves in a better financial spot, then that trickle down goes into their family as well. And so, you know, to impact millions of Americans doesn't mean we've got to have millions of people on our platform. It means that we can touch a lot of people through it. And so when we look at this market, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I think the current pandemic is putting a spotlight on that. It's showing that so many people don't have, businesses and individuals alike, they don't have enough emergency funds and reserves and savings to last if this thing drags out. and there's a lot of people who are losing their jobs, that are being furloughed, that are having hours cut back, all of those things. And so it's put a spotlight on financial health and financial wellness. And so for us, when we see that, and we know 78% of Americans, it's 254 million Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Today, when you look out across this and kind of the infancy of our market with financial wellness and on-demand pay, there is such a huge opportunity for us. And with our current rates, we were just putting together some figures today, some Q1 figures. Right now, what we're seeing is, and these numbers have grown in the past couple of weeks. So we're trying to balance and calibrate those as to what's real and what's just kind of fluctuating due to external circumstances. But what we're seeing right now is about 25% of all eligible employees are using immediate pay every pay period. As of March, our average user made 1.1 transactions per pay period. And the numbers.
What type of industries are typically using these? Like what industries are you seeing using immediate the most?
Anything that has a high volume of hourly employees, but where we're seeing right now the biggest uptick is in senior living. We've got an aging population. I think the number is 10,000 people a day turn 65 in our country. They're the most at risk for COVID-19. They're trying to lock down these senior living communities, and people are going in there. And a lot of the people that are working in senior living communities are part of that 78% that are living paycheck to paycheck. One group that we recently took live, we've seen a huge spike in the amount of transactions that they're making and the amount of money that they're pulling out just to help make ends meet. And they're working long shifts, and they're putting themselves in harm's way to go in and take care of our aging population. And so we're putting a big focus there, and senior living and in healthcare in general. We've also got some companies that use immediate pay that are restaurants. We've got some that are warehouses. We've got some landscaping organizations. It's across the board. I mean, the ubiquity of what we do is really obvious. But as we continue to grow, we know that these verticalization strategies that we can put into place, specifically around healthcare and organizations like that, where we can create a lot of value. So we've seen a major spike in the past month or so, and we know that for us to continue to positively impact people's health financially, we've got to be there for them in this time of need.
Well, this was really good. Brandon, do you have any other questions? You're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you for sharing this with us.